Good morning, everyone. You're very welcome back. My name is David Nelligan, and I'm excited to be here at Radiocentre Sounding Out 2024. By way of introduction, my name is David Nelligan. I moved home from Ireland about 2 years ago. I was living abroad for about 8 years, and 2 years ago I moved back to Kerry and was delighted to end up in a role with Radio Kerry. So I'm a radio broadcaster, presenter, producer and journalist with Radio Kerry, and last year was honoured to win the IMRO Newcomer of the Year award at the IMRO Radio Awards. So it's been a roller coaster for a few years. Honoured to be a member of the Radio Kerry team. Our latest JNLR figures show we are indeed the voice of the kingdom. Weekly reach of 87,000 listeners. A high proportion of those are solace listeners. 68%, so those are listeners who listen to Radio Kerry only and no other station. And we have a market share of 55.7% of radio listeners in Kerry. So indeed, as I said, delighted to be the voice of the kingdom. I'm also delighted to be here in Dublin today to disprove the myth that Kerry people only come up here a few times a year. The 8th of December for the Christmas shopping and the All-Ireland final day, so it's nice to be here for something else. And I'm delighted and honoured to be here, and thanks very much to Kieran for inviting me up. Now I'm excited to say we have something very special for you. What you could say, I suppose, is a world exclusive. We'll go with that. Brand new research to be presented here in the round room at the Mansion House for Sounding Out 2024. This study seeks to demonstrate that advertising can drive brand growth and to establish whether adding audio alongside AV is more effective in doing so. And to talk through the background to the research and to showcase the results, please welcome from independent research agency Differentology, Penny Browell and Matt Picton.
Aha, there we go, perfect. It's great to be back. I was here last year. I think I was wearing exactly the same outfit. So I haven't updated in 1 year. I've still got some way to go to match Craig's 10 years of not updating outfits. I'm going to talk through the background of the study that we've done, which is all around using audio advertising to expand your brand. And then Penny is going to take you through the much more interesting data, findings and implications. So the start point of the study essentially was a lot of what we've heard today, in that radio is often used tactically, it's used kind of for messaging, it's used for direct sales response, often kind of lesser thought of in terms of building a brand and brand growth strategy objectives. So there were two things that we really kind of wanted to understand. We want to investigate audio's advertising power as a driver of strategic brand growth, and also can audio advertising be used to increase the mental availability of brands? Spoiler alert, it can. A lot of the principles and framework that we use to assess that is the work done by Byron Sharp, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And the two key principles that we're kind of leaning into as part of this study are whether brands that easily spring to mind largely determine what we buy. We've heard a lot about that today in terms of it's not a rational kind of process. We don't overthink what we buy. We're in the supermarket, we're thinking about buying something, we buy it, right? We've got some mental associations there. And also that a larger network of memory associations leads to a greater chance of purchase. As a brand, if I come to mind more readily for lots of different occasions, I'm more likely to be bought by people, right? That makes sense. To do that, we need a mechanic of how to measure it. And the term of measurement, or I guess the framework for measurement, is category entry points that we've used as part of our survey questioning. Some of you may be familiar with category entry points, others may not be. So I'll explain this. And this is a definition used by the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, or Byron Sharp does all his work. So category entry points are the cues that category buyers use to access their memories when faced with a buying situation. And these can include internal cues, so how am I feeling? Am I happy? Am I sad? Motives, am I wanting to be fresh, want to drink? And external cues, location, time of day. Is it breakfast time? Is it lunchtime? Am I at work? Am I with the kids? Am I with my wife? All of those things, different category entry points that frame cues and memories for brands. As a live example, here's one we've made earlier in true Blue Peter fashion. In fact, it's nicked from Byron Sharp's book. So for soft drinks, which wasn't a category that we've done in the test, here's just an example of what we mean by category entry points. So am I thinking about having fun with friends? Am I wanting a soft drink that gives me energy? In which case, probably Monster, Red Bull come to mind, not necessarily Pepsi or something else. Is it worth the cost? Do I want something that's authentic and real? Is it something that I want to have with food? I'm on a night out with my lads? What am I drinking? So lots of different category entry points. Why are category entry points important, I hear you say? Well, we know from the work with Byron and Sharp that larger brands are associated with a larger number of category entry points. So the more category entry points you are associated with, the bigger your brand, the greater the chance you have to grow. Equally, category entry points allow us to assess the strength of a brand through a range of different measures. And there's only 3 measures we're going to talk about today, and we're going to talk about these, hopefully, in relatively simple terms, so mortals like me can understand it, and yourselves can follow along with what we're going to actually show. So it allows us to assess brand strength, but also brand performance relative to other brands, which is what we've done as part of the study. 3 key metrics are all based on category entry points, and you may have heard these terms previously. A mental penetration, which is the percentage of the population which associate my brand with any category entry point. Think of it as a bit like mental reach. Network size is the average number of category entry points that someone associates with my brand. And that could be 1, that could be 2, that could be 7. And then share of mind is what proportion of all the brand associations with all the category entry points does my brand own? So it's like a share of, think of it as share of voice, but for memory, effectively. Now, the start of the study is obviously defining what are the category entry points that we need to ask about in our survey to elicit a response in the brands. To do that, and I don't know if the people we spoke to are in the room, but we had some help from people more in the know than us. So brand planners at OMD and Core we spoke to assess for the 3 categories we're interested in, what are the category entry points we're going to use as part of this survey. And I'll kind of walk you through these now. So the 3 categories we had was laundry detergent, and this is not an exhaustive list of all the category entry points that are associated with laundry detergent. There are multiple tens, hundreds that could potentially be associated, but these are the 9 that we have used within the survey and study that we've conducted. So things like softness and protection. Am I looking for luxurious feeling? Is it about kind of caring for the household? And within the study, we assessed a test brand. I can't reveal the test brand. It's one of those 5, and a competitive set, all big, well-known brands. We've then defined the same category entry points for our 2 other categories that we tested. So we've done a range of categories because we want to demonstrate that this is true across categories and not just in a single category, right? It's robust. As Mr. Tyndall said, trust us, trust us, trust us. So ham and processed meat, is it about convenience? Am I looking for a great taste? Is it about getting a healthy snack? Right? So these are different category entry points we used for ham and processed meat and the brands that were included in the test there. And then finally, fast food restaurants. Again, is it great value? Am I at the start of the day? Is it for a treat or reward? Is it about reliability, knowing what I'm going to get? And again, the test brands that we included within the survey. I'm now going to hand over to Penny, who's going to talk through a bit about what we did and the findings.
Thank you. I'm just going to talk through, before I get onto the interesting results, I'm going to talk through exactly what we did. I know this bit is a little bit boring, but I think it's important that everybody knows that we put a lot of work into the project. So it was a large-scale online survey. We had 2,700 respondents. So obviously there were those 3 categories that we talked about. We've got 900 for each of those. We used what we call cloaked exposure within the survey. So obviously we can't find people who've necessarily seen exactly what we want in terms of combination of advertising. So what we did was, before they were served the survey, they were shown bits of content. Within that content was some advertising. So they didn't know that we were going to be talking to them about advertising, and they might be seeing some advertising that wasn't related to this. So they were just being shown some general content prior to the survey. What we did for each of the test brands, we had an audiovisual ad that had already been created. We then went and made our own audio ads alongside that. And we used kind of relevant audio hooks, so whether it's like a voice that they might recognize from the campaign from the TV or a little sonic cue, it would be kind of in line with the campaign already existing. For each brand, we had 3 groups. I'll explain in a little more detail on the next slide how we expose the different groups to different advertising. And as I said, after the cloaked exposure, there was then a survey. So within that survey, this is when we kind of got to the crux of whether the brands were associated with category entry points. So, for example, for the fast food, we might say, when you want to go to a fast food restaurant and you're thinking of somewhere that's great value, where would you think of first? Or when you want to go to a fast food restaurant and you're thinking of somewhere that does good breakfast, where do you think of first? So, as I said, for each of our brands, we had 3 different groups. So we had what we're calling the control cell. So within their content that they were shown some ads, but none of them were relating to the brand that we're talking about or even to the category. So all the ads were unrelated completely to the category we're talking about. Secondly, we had the AV-only cell. So they were just shown an audio-visual ad for the test brand. They were shown that twice within different bits of content. And then thirdly, we have our AV with audio test cell. So they were shown the AV ad once, but then they were also shown 2 audio ads that we had created. So this way we could look at whether the AV advertising had any effect on their mental penetration and the category entry points, but then also whether the audio added to that as well. So, finally getting into the actual results. First of all, as Matt said, we've got 3 kind of key metrics that we wanted to look at. The first one is mental penetration. So this is just the percentage of people that associate the brand with at least one of those category entry points. So they've got some sort of mental connection with that brand. For the purpose of the chart here, what we've done is we've combined everything into one. So all of those unexposed respondents are in the orange bar. All of the ones who were exposed to some sort of advertising are in the yellow bar. As you probably noticed from all the brands that Matt showed earlier, all of the brands we were talking about were pretty well known. So actually, the unexposed people already had very high level of mental penetration with the test brands. But it was encouraging to see that those who were exposed to some extra, to the advertising, whether it was AV or both AV and audio, their mental penetration was increased by 6%. So we're already seeing that, advertising works in increasing mental penetration, even with big brands. So beyond that, we know that they've got association with one category entry point. We wanted to see how many category entry points they've got an association with. This is like the network size, the average number of category entry points associated with the brand. You want your brand to be associated with lots of those category entry points, so there's more and more likelihood of your consumers thinking of your brand when they're in different situations. So looking at network size, again, we've averaged together the 3 brands that we looked at. We've got the control is represented by the circle, so they're the unexposed respondents. Those who were exposed just to the audio-visual ads are in the yellow circle, and those who are exposed to both audio-visual and audio are in the pink circle. So as we can see, the network size is increased by 13% for those who have been exposed to the audio-visual ad, and it's increased even further if you add in the audio ads as well. So this is showing that your brand is getting more, it's thought about more if you're putting your ads on audio as well as AV, which is great to see. And then the other measure we wanted to look at is share of mind. So beyond knowing that your brand is getting thought about, that mental penetration has been increased, we want to know if that affects its position within the market as a whole. So how we do this is we look at all of the associations with any category entry point across the market, and we see what share of those are going to your brand. So what's your kind of share of mind within the whole category? Again, we've averaged the 3 for this chart, and you can see that the controller in orange, the audiovisual are in the middle in yellow, and the additional audio are in pink. As we can see, by adding in audiovisual advertising, you've increased your share of mind by 12%, so that's a significant uplift. But what's really interesting to see is that that increase is almost doubled when you add in audio. So audio is making your brand that much more dominant within the market as a whole. So as Matt mentioned, we can't reveal exactly who the brands were because of client confidentiality, but what we can do is kind of split out by the three. And we thought because this one, you know, those results were so good, we wanted to see if it had worked across all three categories. And the short answer is yes, it did work across all three categories. So you can see that across all three, audiovisual is adding something, but audio is always adding even more, making your share of mind even higher. You may notice that laundry and cooked meats have got bigger growth than fast food. Our hypothesis for this is that it's nothing to do with the categories themselves. It's not that fast food isn't as well affected by advertising or whatever. It's more to do with the creatives. So we know that the kind of audio branding was better within the laundry and cooked meats advertising. One thing that was very interesting is they both had local voices, so they were local. These were all done in Ireland, by the way, so they were local voices. They also had good kind of sonic cues, so those sorts of things can help the advertising be even more effective in this way. So finally, whilst those are the kind of three key measures that Byron Sharp talked about, we thought it'd be interesting to home in on one of the categories to look at the specific category entry points, because the way we designed the audio ads was to talk to specific category entry points. So it's interesting to see if any of those have actually been particularly affected by the advertising. So for this, we looked at the laundry detergent brand, and we've got those 9 category entry points that Matt had up on the chart earlier. We've got them around the side of the spider, and then we've got in the middle the number of associations for the control, which is on the orange. Then you can see the yellow, which is the audiovisual only exposures. On every single category entry point, you can see that that advertising has helped, so they're more likely to associate the brand with those. Then the pink is where we've added in the audio as well, and you can see that it's just as effective, so you're never losing anything, but in some cases, you're doing even better. And interestingly, those 2 category entry points on the right, part of routine and giving great cleaning results, have got really significant differences between just having the audio-visual and including audio. So by adding in the audio, you're boosting the association with those category entry points, which is then going to kind of boost consideration and so on. So to summarize what we've been through and what we think it means for planners, I've just got a couple more slides. So, as we've seen, audio advertising has a significant impact on helping brands spring to mind more readily in purchasing situations. What we've seen is that audio ads increase effects when added to audiovisual ads. So, as you just saw in the previous chart, we increase associations with specific category entry points. That in turn leads to expanding the brand's network size, so the network of mental associations, which in turn leads to increasing the share of mind for a brand. And all of that is going to lead to you being more likely to be considered and therefore more likely to be purchased. And finally, the implications for planners. From our point of view, from what we've learned from this study, we would recommend that you consider using audio to extend the reach of brand campaigns. The best way to do that is going to be to create multiple large audio executions to fit with those specific category entry points as we did within our test. And as well as thinking about the range of places, different times of day, all those things that are specific to audio, to radio, as we know, also thinking about some of those points I made about kind of audio hooks and local voices and so on. So finally, we feel that if you allocate budget to audio, your campaigns are going to be just as successful as they were with just audio visual, and also enhance your cost effectiveness. Thank you.